What she did not do was take any amount of responsibility for her current job. You cannot leave the same people in charge. If you believe the country's on the wrong track, if you believe they made all the mistakes on the economy and on immigration, you cannot leave the same people in charge that have run the country off into the ditch.
Well, last night was the final night of the Democratic National Convention. Kamala Harris accepted the nomination that no one actually voted for. And it took Scott Jennings, who we've become great fans of over here at CNN, to sort of say what everybody's been thinking about the speech and about this convention. Here's Scott.
I think you're going to have a hard time saddling her in the way that you guys are hopeful that you can.
Well, she still flies around on Air Force Two. I mean, but that's the race, and it's going to take place in a truncated period of time. Can she get away from him, or can Donald Trump and his campaign apparatus drive home the point that there's no blank slate here, that this is a person who's been right next to Joe Biden, executing on the policies that you say have driven you crazy over the last 4 years? And there's really just a simple question for Trump to ask. If you're upset about the direction of the country, maybe you don't put the people in charge who are already in the White House. I don't know who's going to win that race, but to me, between now and the debate on September 10th, that is the argument that's going to be had between these two juggernaut campaigns. The issue you didn't list in your bullets, the economy and inflation, I still think at the end of the day, the people are so upset with Biden and Harris on the economy. If the Republicans tie her to it, all of the other stuff falls away because it's the most important. Republican pushback, and I think there's some truth to this, is that some of this is just substanceless pablum, that there's really no specificity in it, and that they ultimately think they are going to be able to fire her as the incumbent. And I think that's the question that we're really going to be answering over the next couple of months. How far can she run away from Joe Biden to prevent the Republicans from portraying her as the incumbent and then firing her as the incumbent? The country is off on the wrong track. People believe it. They still have economic anxiety. Can she shake off those vibes and replace them with this sort of esoteric unity vibe that they've been portraying at the convention?
What she did not do was take any amount of responsibility for her current job, which is vice president of the United States for the last 3.5 years under Joe Biden. There was not an ounce of humility about the inflation gripping the country. She talked about immigration without talking about all the things that happened right up until this border bill that they have hung all their hats on over at the Biden White House. So to me, where the Republicans are going to be headed is all the pablum, all the platitudes, all that aside, you cannot leave the same people in charge. If you believe the country's on the wrong track, if you believe they made all the mistakes on the economy and on immigration, you cannot leave the same people in charge that have run the country off into the ditch. Until she comes up with a good answer for that, which I suspect will have to be litigated at the debate on September 10th, Donald Trump is still in a very good position.
The problem.
Yeah, Scott Jennings on message. Akash, it is an amazing phenomenon to watch. Do you think that Kamala Harris and the Democrats over the course of the last 4 days have successfully brainwashed America into thinking that they're not the incumbents? Because they are.
Yeah, I mean, there's this interesting dichotomy where she is seen as this glass-shattering new age candidate. And she is, of course, has the diversity to say that she is. But from an incumbency standpoint, absolutely not. She cannot make that claim, and the Democrats in general can't make that claim, Larry. Not only is she vice president, but they've been in control for 12 out of the last 16 years in the White House. And yet somehow they're finding it within themselves to blame 4 years of Donald Trump for every problem facing the country. I don't think the American people are going to believe that substantively. So it really does come down to Kamala Harris's quote unquote glass shattered candidacy against exactly that argument that Scott Jennings is making. Can Donald Trump prosecute the case against her for being the deciding vote for the inflation crisis and for failing to control the border crisis?
Yeah, and a huge part of this convention, which, by the way, is very different than it would have been should Joe Biden been the nominee. Joe Biden would have been running on 4 more years. Things are great. Strongest economy in the world. Don't tell me any bad news. Instead, Sarah, for the last 4 days, we've actually had the recognition and acknowledgement that people are very angry and unhappy, but in some way they're distancing themselves from being the ones who made them unhappy. Are they going to win? Are they going to get away with that?
I don't think so, honestly. At this point, it's just complete BS. Everybody sees through it. You know, we can't pay our 401ks. We can't pay for our grocery bills. we can't even pay to put gas in our cars, yet the Democrats are walking around like everything is hunky dory. And honestly, it's very fascinating when you see that Kamala is the glass shattered ceiling candidate. She's putting these limitations in place for herself to act like she's doing more than she is.
Hmm.
Plus, you're going from the legacy Democrats, the Clintons, the Bidens, the Obamas, and you're going into this new socialist agenda. And
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense now why the policies aren't on her website. They can't just get anything done. They can't figure out their angle anymore.
This is interesting, and I'd love to quick follow up. Are you saying that basically she's her message is, well, I'm the first Black woman to run for president, and we've never had a seat at the table of power, so you can't put this on me, when she is literally the vice president? By the way, at the same time, the president is incapacitated. She's trying to thread that needle?
Yeah, definitely. And you have to think about the fact that she could have done all of this with the stroke of a pen. She, as the vice president, doesn't have the same jurisdiction as Joe Biden. But at the end of the day, she's in power. She has been for the past 3.5 years.
Right.
She's to blame too.
That's
it's not just Biden.
Oh, and forget about, in the last 3.5 years, any policy that she wants right now, it's not like Joe Biden. If she proposes it, it's not like Joe Biden would say, oh, pump the brakes there, honey. We're not going to do that. She can do whatever she wants between now and Election Day. Jim Hansen, there was your expertise in wheelhouse, of course, is national security issues and foreign policy. Not a whole lot of that talked about this week. And is that because they literally cannot even attempt to suggest that what's going on in the world right now is not their fault, because none of it happened when Donald Trump was president?
Yeah, it's kind of tough when the world's on fire and you're standing there with a gas can to claim that you're not the one who did this. They are the arsonists who started the world on fire. And I think the problem Kamala has, aside from all of the dismal failures they've had in pretty much every aspect of the Biden administration, she actually is on record saying some of the most outrageous policies. She refuses to sit down and do an interview because she's going to have to answer questions like, did you really say you want to seize the patents of drug companies and take over production yourselves? Because that reminds me of seizing the means of production. She said, she wants equity. She wants equal outcomes from government, which is another one of those. It comes from some ideology. We're going to have to figure out which one it is. And she's going to have to answer for all of those when some journalist finally gets her sitting down. But even more so when Donald Trump gets to wave those in the world's face and say, you said all these things. There's video of you saying it. How are you going to walk that back?
Yeah. Karl Marx ideas, but presented in a very kid-friendly Marx Brothers kind
joyously
of
vibe-ish.
Yes, the vibe is there. Well, that's a remarkable thing to watch. And I don't think Donald Trump ever expected, as he was running against Joe Biden, who he's already defeated, now Kamala Harris, that his first task was to convince the American people that he's not the incumbent. But here we are.